Today we find ourselves in chapter 37 of the book of Exodus. We've been looking at a couple of things there, following maybe specifically how God had a plan and a purpose. We looked at Bezalel, and today we're going to pick up in chapter 37. We're going to read a portion of verse 1, which for me just embodies what we've been talking about, the culmination, the product of what we've been talking about. In chapter 37 and verse 1, we read, Bezalel made. That's what it starts off with. And then it continues to tell the story of all of what Bezalel made. He made the various items that needed to go into the temple, that which God had ordained. You see, we started off by saying that God had a plan and a purpose for Bezalel's life. God equipped him with the skills that he would require at the right time to be able to go and do that which God had planned and purposed for him to do. But we also see that Bezalel didn't just run off. He didn't go and start. He didn't just kick off now that he had the plans, now that he knew what he needed to do. He waited for God to say, start. See, God moved him in his spirit. God stirred up his spirit to say, it is time. Bezalel then had to make a choice. Was he going to do that which God had equipped him to do? Was he going to do that which God was stirring him up in his spirit to do? Was he going to go or to stay? Was he going to move or tarry? Was he going to get out of the boat, or was he going to hide back in the boat? Bezalel chose to obey. He chose to move. He chose to get out of the boat. Bezalel also didn't allow his talent, his skills to go to his head. He didn't change the design. He didn't say, well, I feel like this would look better. This would be grander. He didn't want to show off his skill. You see, he didn't lead. He chose to follow, and he stuck with God's design. Where are you on your journey? Have you taken the bold action yet of asking God what his plans are, what he wants you to do? Are you still waiting? As perhaps you should, because God hadn't said go yet. Are you running with the task that God had told you to run with? Are you running in the spur of the moment, just following instinct? Or are you following God's design? Are you taking directions from him? The question is, are you where you are supposed to be? You see, many are afraid. Many are afraid of going and speaking to God, asking the question, because they're afraid that he's going to answer. And if he does, they won't have an excuse anymore. They're afraid that it will interfere with the plans that they have already made for their lives. Afraid that they won't have what it takes. Afraid of failure. Afraid that others might look at them and say, you? Seriously? There are so many more capable people out there that can do this. God has a plan and a purpose for your life. He has a timeline with steps required to run this race. He has already, or will at the right time, equip you with what is required to run this race. If you are listening, he will say, go, and will give you the blueprint. Are you ready to get up and go, as Bezalel did? Are you ready for your life, when we look back at it, at the right time, to saying, Daniel moved. Daniel made. May you go out and be blessed as God leads you and as you take the next step in your journey with God.